About 500 years ago, Ferdinand Magellan set sail to circumnavigate the globe for the first time. 5 years later, one ship of 5 returned, and Magellan wasn't one of the lucky few to be returning. But from that day to this, the world has only gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. Each time we discover a new country, cultures collide with one another. Cultures that previously had been completely separate and alone. Cultures that were an island unto themselves. Today, there's a new style of cooking evolving, and it's really the result of our embracing the whole world of flavor, the flavor of the global kitchen. So, in this last session, what I'd like to do is embrace everything we've learned up to this point and see if we can't create a new cuisine. You might know it as fusion cuisine, but I'm going to call it New American Cuisine. What I'd like to do is take one dish that maybe you're familiar with already, fried chicken. And we're going to make variations on the theme that draw inspiration from the cultures around the world. Let's get started. If you go to India, they have a habit of marinating chicken in yogurt, just like this. Just the way that when you make fried chicken, you put your chicken in buttermilk along with spices and salt. And the reason you might do that is so that the acidity in the buttermilk can make the chicken tender, the spices can make it flavorful, and the salt can make it juicy and delicious. That's really the same motivation they have in India. But I'm going to use a different set of spices. I'm going to use garam masala. Garam masala is a spice mix, as you know now, that has kind of warming spices in it. Here's garam masala as whole spices, and here, garam masala that's already ground up. The whole spices hold on to their flavor more, and then when you grind them, the flavors are released. So let's get started with some chicken. I've got some chicken legs, and I've divided them up between drumsticks and thighs, and I'm going to put one of each into the yogurt. Then I'm going to add garam masala, and we want to be generous. This is a warming spice mix. In the winter, it can help keep you warm. In the summer, it can keep you cool. That's nice and handy. And I've got some other things that you may or may not choose to add. As an example, if you like your food spicy, why not put in a little serrano chili, fresh chili? I've got some garlic here and a little bit of fresh ginger. Now, if you're unsure at all about how much of these spices to add, what I would suggest is you start with the yogurt, you add the spices a little bit at a time, and then you taste the yogurt before you put the chicken in. Taste it again, and when you're happy with the flavor, then add the chicken and let it sit overnight. And I'm going to add just a hair more, and we'll take this chicken, put it into the refrigerator, and we'll come back to it tomorrow. Okay, we're on the move. We've left India behind, and we're on our way to China. I had an idea that it might be fun to use the tea smoking method to add flavor to the chicken. I don't want to cook the chicken all the way because we're going to fry the chicken after all. So this likely looks a little familiar. I've got the tea smoked chicken here in the pan. Take a look. It's got a wonderful amber glaze on it. But as I squeeze it, I can feel that the chicken is still a little bit raw on the inside, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. The smell is delicious. I've got the same yogurt. I'm going to add a little bit more of the Chinese 5-spice. I'm going to add some salt. We'll stir that together, and then we'll add the chicken, and this can then be set aside overnight, and we'll revisit it tomorrow after the flavors have soaked into the meat and it's ready to be fried. Make sure that all the yogurt coats the outside of the meat so that it can become a little bit more tender. Again, do yourself the favor of mixing the spice into the yogurt, tasting it before you add the chicken, and then carrying on. Moving on, the next stop is Mexico. You remember we did a lot of work with chilies when we made that mole, and just to remind you, we took each of the chilies and we put them into a dry pan and we pressed them against the hot surface of the pan to toast them. What I did not do the other day is take those chilies and grind it into a varietal chili powder, although you can do that. So once the color is mottled, once they're aromatic, you could take the chilies out of the pan, get rid of the stem, get rid of the seeds, and let this cool, and you could grind it up into a varietal chili powder. I've done that already, and you see those chili powders right here. In the back, I've got a darker chili powder, which is ancho, and in the front, the lighter colored chili powder is guajillo. So I want to make a little spice rub. Think of this as a barbecue rub. I'm going to start with the chili powders. There goes the ancho, and the guajillo is going to lend the bright citrusy quality that will balance the richness of ancho. Next, I want to add some spices. I have ground coriander. Now, coriander seed is the same spice that comes from the plant that gives you cilantro. So it has kind of a citrusy edge to it. Next, the Mexican oregano, which, as we've learned, is actually in the verbena family. And if you can't find it, marjoram is a great substitute. After that, some toasted cumin powder and a little bit of clove. I'm going to add some brown sugar to this, which will underscore the fact that the chilies are really ripe fruit, and then a good deal of salt. This particular spice rub could be used anytime you're making barbecue. One thing that I sometimes add to a rub like this is a little bit of instant coffee. Coffee gives you the bitterness and the depth of flavor that you just can't get any other way. And when you put it into a rub, it really takes people by surprise. They can't really put their finger on it. All right, I'm going to take and put some of this spice rub into yogurt. The balance of this spice rub can go into a bowl or a sealed jar, and you can keep it very happily for a couple of weeks, even a month or so. Make sure it's sealed and you keep it in a dry, dark place. Here is our chicken, and before I add chicken to this, I just want to mix it up. All right, and then in goes some chicken. We'll toss that, and this Latin-inspired chicken marinade can go into the refrigerator overnight, and it'll be waiting for us tomorrow when we're ready to fry chicken. The last stop on our trip around the world is Morocco, and we're going to revisit an old friend, Ras el Hanout. I've got the spices laid out here that represent a very basic or simple version of Ras el Hanout. Likely you're not going to stock this many spices, so you might go to the store and just buy a version of it. This has cloves, it has cardamom, it's got cinnamon, cumin, this is ginger, black pepper, nutmeg, and coriander, along with some hot chilies. So I'm going to set that aside, but what I have here is Ras el Hanout that I bought in a store. Now, I want to show you a technique that might surprise you. There are places in this world where they make a grilled or a fried chicken, but they braise that chicken first until it's cooked all the way, and then they cool it down in the broth that it cooked in so it absorbs that flavor, only to take it out later on and recook it. And that's exactly what we're going to do with Ras el Hanout. In this pan, I have onions and I have fennel that I've sweat until they're translucent. In there, I'm going to add some garlic. I'm going to turn the heat up just a hair. And then we're going to add ras al hanout and exercise some care that you don't burn those spices in the hot oil. As soon as it hits the heat, you'll appreciate how wonderful this smells. Now, I've got some chicken. I'm going to braise 4 pieces, 2 thighs and 2 drumsticks, and we'll put those in as well. But remember, later on when we fry this chicken, will be time enough to brown the outside. Here, all I'm trying to do is coat it in the flavorful spices and oil that's in the bottom of the pan. There's a couple of other components to our braise. I've got them laid out here, but you'll see them come and go into the pan in quick succession. I'm going to add some tomatoes. I'm going to add some olives, green olives, that will lend a wonderful brininess to this. I've got some preserved lemons, which we've talked about already. I'm going to add some saffron that's been soaked in water. And I'm just going to move this around in the pan. Once the chicken has seized up, once it's turned white, then we can introduce a little bit of chicken stock. Bring it to a boil and simmer it very gently with a lid on it until the chicken is cooked all the way to the bone. Cook it gently. Just because there's liquid in there doesn't mean you can't overcook it. Now, take a look right here. I have a pot of chicken that has been braised. The liquid has reduced. The chicken is cooked. And what I want to do is take the chicken out of this pan and put it into a bowl. I've even chilled this down, and rest assured that this chicken is cooked all the way to the bone. There's no raw protein in this any longer. Next, I would like to add a little bit of yogurt to this braising liquid. Before I do, I'm just going to taste it, and I would encourage you to do the same. This has been cooked down, so it's almost a concentrate of chicken and vegetables, tomatoes, and ras al hanout. I'm going to add some yogurt to this and stir it together. I'm going to make a little marinade. Actually, I'm making a sauce because this is already cooked. And I'm going to pour that sauce right over the chicken. This could go into a Ziploc bag if that's easier. And set it aside in your refrigerator until tomorrow when it'll come time to fry it. I'd like to take just a second to remind you how far we've traveled. Take a look. An Indian-inspired marinated chicken with yogurt and garam masala. Right next door, a Chinese tea-smoked chicken that has Chinese 5-spice. Here is a chicken marinated in yogurt with a Latin-inspired barbecue rub, and then finally the braised chicken with ras al hanout. This chicken has so much flavor, and yet each dish is distinct unto itself. I don't know what you like to eat with fried chicken, but for me, it's all about coleslaw. But we need to make a coleslaw that makes sense for the various countries we're visiting. So I'm going to start with India. I've got some spices lined up here. I've got turmeric, cayenne, and cumin, and these spices are all ground. Remember, if we wake that up in hot fat, if the fat is too hot, they can burn. So I'm going to show you a fun little technique where you take the spices and you put them into a bowl. Next, I'm going to add some coconut. Now, this is unsweetened coconut. Typically, the stuff that you have at home will be sweetened, but you can find it. Sometimes it's called macaroon coconut. We're going to put this in as well, and then I'm going to add some water to it. I'm going to moisten those spices so that when I put them into a hot pan, they don't burn. Just add enough water so that you can make a little spicy ball of coconut and cumin, turmeric, and cayenne. All right, so that's good. Here we go. This is going to be a warm slaw, a warm coleslaw. I've got a pan on the heat right now, and I'm going to begin the process by popping some mustard seeds. You've seen it before. I'm going to show it to you again. Make sure you have a lid close by, because once they start to pop, it's like popcorn and they will go everywhere. Once the pan is hot, add some oil. Once the oil begins to creep around the pan, add some mustard seed. And we'll leave them uncovered until we get our first pop. Now we're going to cover it over and just listen. Just like with popcorn, stir it every once in a while, and you're waiting for the popping to subside. And I think we're just about there. It doesn't take very long. All right. Now we can take the lid off. And to this same pan, I'm going to add some dal. This is lentils that have been ground, had the outside ground off, some curry leaves, and 1 chili pepper. And what I want to do is I want to sizzle those leaves in the hot fat. They'll become crispy. The dal will become golden, and while it's a legume, it's also a spice. It'll become kind of nutty. You're looking for the dal to turn golden, and we're just about there. Next, I'm going to add some onions. I'm going to cook those onions. The nice thing about adding a whole chili to a dish like this is that if you decide it's starting to get a little bit too hot, it's an easy thing to take this out. Minute or two, that's it. Next, in goes carrots. And to help them cook, a little splash of water. That'll start them steaming. I want them to be cooked, but sort of crisp tender, so it doesn't take very long. I gave the carrots a head start, but now the cabbage goes in. Again, a little splash of water. And then if you remember, we've got this bowl of spices and coconut, which I want to add as well, just at the end. Because it'll take a minute or two for us to mix it all in, I'm going to add it right now, and we'll get started with that. Now, if this is a coleslaw, right now there is no dressing on it, so just a splash of lemon juice or lime juice, your choice. A little bit of salt. And let's make sure that this comes out of the pan before it loses that crisp texture. This is great while it's hot. It's great at room temperature, so we can set it aside. But what I want to do is just taste it quickly. A little more salt and acid. And we'll set that aside. There you are. Next, I want to make a slaw that's inspired by Asia to go with our tea smoked chicken. I've got some kimchi here, and I'm going to take it out of the jar and just drain it of any liquid that's in there. I'm going to save that liquid and probably repurpose it later. Okay, let me set that aside. There is a little bit of liquid coming off this. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to take and chop up a little bit of this kimchi. Maybe just a little bit more. And we're going to add it into a bowl that's got Napa cabbage, red cabbage, carrots, and snow peas. So I'm going to gather that up, and it's going to be almost like adding pickles to a coleslaw. I'm going to put green onions in there. I'm going to put sesame seeds in there, toasted sesame seeds. And the dressing for this slaw, in addition to the liquid that is on the kimchi, is going to be a little bit of soy and rice wine vinegar. Likely you won't need any salt because of the soy sauce. We'll just toss it together and give it a chance to macerate. By all means, taste it, but I think everybody can decide exactly how a coleslaw should taste in terms of salt, in terms of acid, and in terms of balance. All right, so there is our Asian-inspired slaw. Next, I need a Latin coleslaw. So I went to the refrigerator, and I'll show you exactly what I found. 2 different cabbages. I've got red and green cabbage, and a jicama. So I shredded some jicama. I'm going to add green onions, scallions. I've got some cilantro. And then I started to run out of steam when I noticed some green salsa that just happened to be in the refrigerator. This is tomatillo salsa. It's got lime juice and onions, cilantro, garlic, and I'm going to use that as a dressing. Toss this all together, and it'll probably need a little bit of salt, likewise a little bit of lime juice, but that's easy to do. Salt. Let's start with this lime. And this will have to macerate for a little bit. If you like the idea of a slaw that's a little bit hotter, you can always add green chilies to it. But remember, we put a lot of chilies on the chicken already. This is really something designed to cool your palate off, not to heat it up. All right. This slaw is officially done. If you've ever laid awake at night wondering what might go into a Mediterranean slaw, tonight you're going to sleep like a baby. I've got cabbage. Here's a little bit of grated or shredded fennel. I'm going to take the fennel tops and use those as well because I love the color. I've got green olives chopped up. Our old friend, preserved lemon. And then I've got whole leaves of parsley and chopped parsley both. We'll set those aside. Now, I'm going to start with lemon juice, but I'd be remiss if I didn't also put on a really nice extra virgin olive oil. And rather than add salt to this, I'm going to take some of the liquid from our preserved lemons, and I'll use that to season this with salt. A sprinkling of cracked black pepper. We'll toss it together, and I declare this slaw complete. So at this point, all the work's done except for the frying. I've got a pan of hot oil right here. I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit. Now, if you have a thermometer, you're looking for temperatures somewhere between 325 and 350. But the way I evaluate it is first I look at the oil, and if it starts to shimmer a little bit, that's a good sign. If it smokes, it's way too hot. Turn it off and run. But short of that, put a piece of bread in there. And what you can expect is that in about 45 seconds, that bread will turn a nice golden brown. We'll see how this oil is doing. In the meantime, I want to take this Indian chicken with garam masala. I've wiped off most of the yogurt, and I'm going to put it into a resealable bag with a little bit of seasoned flour. You just put salt and pepper in the flour so that it's not robbing flavor from your chicken. We're going to shake it up so that it's completely covered. And then out it comes. Now, you don't want a lot of extra flour on the chicken, so pat all the excess off. And if we come over here and take a look, our bread is pretty nicely golden. I'll set it right there for you to see. So I think we're good to go. I'm going to lower this in. Whenever you put something into hot oil, always recognize that the oil will rise as soon as you displace the oil with something. So don't put too much in there to begin with. I would suggest no more than half full, and lay it in away from yourself so that you don't splash hot oil on yourself. Now, while this is frying, I'm going to get a plate ready. This is the Indian chicken, remember. And here we have our Indian coleslaw. So I'm going to put a little bit of that right on the plate. And I'll tell you, I've kind of fallen in love with this little chili right here, so I'm going to add that as well. Let me put this behind. Just to stay current with this chicken, keep your eye on it. Periodically, just see how it's browning. If it browns within the first 30 seconds, you know your oil is too hot. If, however, by the time we get to about a minute or so, you see a little bit of browning starting, then I think you're on the right track. When it's golden on the first side, we're going to flip it over, and we'll cook it on the second. And many people would tell you that you can control the temperature closely enough so that this chicken can cook all the way to the bone in the oil. But if it's too brown on the outside and you're concerned after cutting into it that it's still a little bit underdone, just finish it in a slow oven at about 325 degrees. I'm going to turn this over now and maybe reduce the heat just a little bit. While it finishes cooking, I have a special sauce that I made for each of these different fried chickens. This is the Indian area right here, and I've got some mango chutney, Major Grey's chutney that I bought. It's easy to do. You maybe even have it in your refrigerator already. And then because of the warming spices and the garam masala, just some yogurt to cool your palate off. I think that's a nice idea. Right over here, I've got the tea smoked chicken, and right next to it, I've got a little dish of a sauce which is nothing more than honey, mixed with the juice that we saved from the kimchi, and you'll be amazed at how delicious it tastes. It's sweet, it's salty, it's spicy, it's savory, it's everything you want in a sauce. Here is the Latin American chicken, and next to it I have a little bit of our mole from a couple of classes ago, and I mixed into it two things. A little bit of fruit preserves to lend some sweetness and some fruitiness, and then a splash of vinegar. And this tastes almost like a chutney in its own right, except that it has a Mexican passport. And then finally over here, you see the braising liquid mixed with yogurt that we cooked the chicken that had ras el hanout on it. That braising liquid is delicious. Just a dollop of yogurt on the top, and it's ready to go as a sauce. All right, the chicken is just about done. I want you to be careful to not walk away from the pot of the oil without turning the burner off. You can turn it off ahead of time. I think that's better. Don't get excited about chicken without turning this oil off. Take it out and put it onto a plate with an absorbent towel. And then we'll bring it over, and I'm going to put it on the plate just like this. So there is our Indian chicken. Here are Chinese. Here the Latin American. And here the Mediterranean. Now, over the course of the last 6 lessons, we've traveled a long way. We've learned about a lot of different cultures. And we've learned about the spices that help define those cultures. We've learned techniques for manipulating those spices so we get the best possible outcome on the plate. And here in the last lecture, we've leveraged everything that we've learned to take a dish that we're all familiar with, fried chicken and coleslaw, and create 4 very distinctive variations on the theme. It's my hope that going forward you'll continue to experiment in the kitchen, that you have a great time doing it, and that when you go to the table you have enjoyable and delicious food just like this.